So as we just mentioned, Journalism was a no-brainer, epic performance of the week, and the Preakness winner justifiably, like the best horse won. I just saw something really cool on like the stride length data, which really showed you how he like knuckled down and went and got that horse. It was like the third quarter of a mile was like 23 point something, like into the stretch was like 23 point something. And then once he got clear, it was like 25 feet plus
Rally
to reel in that horse, which was like that says a lot about like how much he accelerated, because I didn't think Gosger was slowing down at all. Like he ran a huge race, and that's a tough beat if you bet Gosger or if you're the owners of Gosger. But nevertheless, like Journalism was clearly best, and I think proved, the one knock such as there was going into the Derby on him, and when we said it was, oh, he's beating a bunch of 5-horse fields. Like, what's he going to do when he gets into a jackpot in a bigger field? Well, he proved once and for all he doesn't give a shit. Like, he's there to race and he's there to win. So I thought that was, incredibly impressive. From our end, I thought Sandman ran well. He didn't, I thought turning for home, we were going to mow them all down. Like once they turned into the stretch, I was like, okay, here we go. And he was like right on even terms with Journalism, right about the 8th pole. And then Journalism just had a stronger turn of foot than him. So he was third best. I think that big boy needs some blinkers. That's just my humble opinion. He just still gets a little too distracted in the stretch. But he ran well, and we're still proud of him. Probably needs a little bit of a break now. We'll think about pointing him to the summer races at Saratoga. But obviously Mark Casse will make those decisions. John, give me the rest of your reactions from the Preakness.
Well, before I was so rudely interrupted
by the guy keeping the show together,
keeping the show on course. Yes, exactly. By otherwise, I'd be a rudderless ship, as it were. I think a couple of things you can take away. Number one is that Journalism is the beast of the crop. And we've always talked about, what kind of group this is and try to compare it to previous 3-year-old crops in the past. And it's hard until you get through the Triple Crown. But I think it's fair to say that this isn't like the superstar group overall. And it's certainly not the average or worse. It's probably in the upper third, I would say, as far as horses overall. And I think that, you'll look back and in 5-10 years from now, and we'll be like, oh my God, yeah, Sandman and Journalism were in there with goal oriented and Gosger and that was a great Preakness. I think we're going to look back and we're going to be surprised at just how many really solid to really good horses come out of this 3-year-old crop. And the Belmont, Joe, the Belmont is setting up to be an even better field, top to bottom. You can argue than the Preakness is. That being said, Journalism did everything you'd want for your horse to do. He's beaten all comers. He's run exactly the way you want to, close to the lead, far off it in the Derby. He showed he has a little bit of turn of foot, in the Preakness as well, and made a hole for himself that really wasn't there. Kind of bullied his way to the front and then accelerated on top of it. Like with an 1/8 of a mile to go, he was still 2 lengths behind.
At least.
And hit another gear. We were actually like head to head with him, and he had another gear. I like to think Sandman has that extra gear. Well, Journalism has the nitros button, basically, in comparison to everything else in this crop. So it was great to see. I'm happy for the owners. Mike McCarthy seems like a really good dude. He can't throw a first pitch out for shit, but hopefully he'll have more practice of that, as time goes on. And if that's his only knock as a trainer, he's a phenomenal
John's
trainer.
Bitter that we didn't win, and he got asked to throw the first pitch out at Citi Field.
I have my Orioles top on and everything, Joe. I am a little, I was warming up the arm. I'm throwing the ball to the puppy to try to make sure I can go, 61 feet. I mean, just to make sure I don't drop kick one, 5 yards in front of the home plate. But anyway, I digress. I think that the Pimlico overall was a really, really solid race. We'll look back on it as a springboard for other horses. As I was saying before, I don't think that, that Prat is necessarily happy with the way that the race turned out. I think from the one hole you have to send, especially on a Baffert horse that has speed. He didn't for whatever reason, and I think ultimately it cost him a placing in the Preakness, if not having a chance to win the race. Although again, it's a big ask to have to go from an A other than into the Grade 1 Preakness. That is a really huge ask. Not that they haven't done it before, but what's that?
In 2 weeks as well.
In 2 weeks, exactly. And that leads me exactly. This is why we're a good team. You knew exactly what I was going to say, Joe, because now this goes into the argument of horses coming back off a 2 week turnaround time. Can they do it? Should we elongate the window? I think we've proven that good horses can do it. I think we've shown that good horses can do it on a 2-week turnaround basis. And if you need to do it, you can do it. Whether or not that should be the sample size of horses that run on Derby Day and then to come back on Preakness Day, and that's why we should be making the decision or not making the decision to elongate the window between the Derby and the Preakness and the Belmont. I don't think that's necessarily the right metric you should be looking at. I think it comes down to, are you going to have the most competitive fields possible by elongating the window and having a 4-week period between the Derby and the Preakness and the Belmont? Because it's not so much even that these really good horses continue to be really good and can beat horses, on a 2 or 3 week turnaround time. It's whether or not we have the most competitive races possible. And yeah, you can make the argument, well, then it's not really the true test of champions if they hit a Triple Crown. If they win a Triple Crown and every single race has 10 horses in it and 10 quality, or 8 of the 10 are really quality horses, then I think that really is the test of a champion, more so than can they do it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, win those 3 races, 3 for 3. So I know I'm kind of all over the place. That's the Benadryl talking in my head for those of you listening at home. But I think overall, it was a great day. The weather held off. It was hot as balls most of the day, and then it cooled off right before the race came in. But overall, I think that it was a great spectacle. And I have to give a kind of tip of the cap to Pimlico, because I think that they put on a really good show. Whether or not I agree that they should have live music in between the 11th and 12th or the 12th and 13th race, that's just because I'm an old fart and I don't necessarily think that that's what we need. But overall, I think they did a really good job of getting people through the event with like half the building literally condemned and kind of falling down.
That's the thing, is like I was kind of mean to Pimlico last week. I'm far from the only one, but I thought they put on a great show. It was a great day, and there are a lot of charming parts of Pimlico. Like even the infield. Like I know it's a kind of a shit show sometimes, but it's a traditional party spot, and they have great, like, don't let John's curmudgeon instincts fool you. T-Pain was a big hit. Wyclef was a big hit, and we hung out in the jockey club for a little bit, and like all the staff were really friendly, and I just thought it was a nice send off, especially since wagering jumped over 11%, despite the fact that the Derby winner wasn't in there. So just at least from a handle perspective, it doesn't seem to make that much of a difference. We'll see what the TV ratings were, but I thought that was a really positive development, and might be an effect of more eyes being on the Triple Crown this year. Especially some of the younger folks. So I thought that was really interesting, and I thought that they did a great job. We went to the toast to the Preakness winner party afterwards at the Stakes Barn. That was a lot of fun too. That was way past John's bedtime, so he doesn't know anything about that. But that was a good time, and so I was actually with the horse until 10 o'clock. But thank you very much. That's okay. Yeah. All right. Anyway. Were you cooling him out yourself, or were we just shooting video? Well, we were talking about what the next step is going to be with them, but that's all right. You go drink and party with the cool kids. You let us know. But no, so I was pleasantly surprised and actually honestly kind of honored to be there for the last Preakness at the old Pimlico before they build a new one. So that was really cool. And just going back to the 2-week rest thing, like Matt Dinnerman had a really interesting post on Twitter about like all the past 15 years and all the horses who would come back on 2 weeks rest and run well in the Preakness. Like 1, 3, 4 in this year's Preakness were back in 2 weeks. Sees the Gray last year after winning the Pat Day Mile, and Mystic Dan ran second. There's a long list of horses. There were a bunch. Huh? There were a bunch. I thought it was a great tweet. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I read another tweet that said, don't fact check me on this, but said 28 of the last 35 Preakness winners, including journalism, have run in the Kentucky Derby. And there's at least 2 more who ran on Derby weekend. So I don't think that it's, to me, I've evolved on the Triple Crown spacing. And I do think that I think 4 weeks and 4 weeks is the way to go. But don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a horse safety issue. I just think that this is the tide that has been building for a long time now, and Bill Mott is just the guy who really kind of kicked it into high gear. And it's just the reality of the situation that these fields are going to get less and less quality if we don't elongate the Triple Crown. But I don't think it's a horse safety or horse performance thing. Like, you see these horses come back in 2 weeks all the time and run really well. And I agree with what John's saying. Like, yes, does it make it easier for the Derby winner in terms of rest to have 4 weeks and then 4 weeks instead of 2 and then 3? Yes. But it also makes it easier for everybody else that he's running against to come back in 4 weeks and 4 weeks. So yes, the spacing will make it a slightly easier task, but the competition, I think, will be heightened coming into those races more so than it would be with the current spacing. So I've evolved on this, but I don't want it to be misconstrued, because the data shows that it really is no problem for horses to come back in 2 weeks and run well.
Right. And I think part of it also, Joe, is that, everyone is shooting for the Derby and everyone's trying to get there because of the prestige that is involved with it. It's no longer even like the money necessarily, because the actual purse money is comparable to like the Breeders' Cup Classic and some of the races overseas. So it's not a matter of, oh, this is my one chance to get the big money in that sense. It's what everyone shoots for, is the breeders shoot for and want to have as their top line of their resume. And then after that, it's almost like the Preakness is an afterthought. And in order to make it not an afterthought, maybe we need to shift it. And I agree with you. I've totally changed my viewpoint on this as to whether or not we want to go tradition, and that's the way it worked. And how can we compare this next Triple Crown winner to American Pharaoh or Justify or even ones before that? Because we're moving the goalposts. But you know what? Other sports have kind of done the same thing. And baseball, when they moved in, the fences on the majority of their stadiums and had home run champions, it wasn't like with an asterisk because we moved the fences in, or because the technology is making pitchers better, and therefore, instead of having, trying to hit against a guy when he's throwing his 130th pitch, you're already 4 deep into the bullpen of flamethrowers, and it's harder to like. All these things are evolutions of their sports, not deterrents of, well, it's not as good as it used. We're always going to say, especially me, it's not as good as it used to be. But in order to make it the best product possible for hopefully our fans, but also for the competitors, you want to have the best horses in each race. And statistics have shown, studies have shown that the better the field, the more horses and the better the field, the more likely it is that people are going to bet on those races. And I think we owe it to the gamblers to put together the best product possible for these races. Again, that's in addition to all the other things that I said before. So don't make that item one when you're ready to send hate mail to me. Well, we don't really need to worry about the gambler. I think.
Oh God, please don't say that.
Yeah, no, we need to worry about the gamblers. That's what I'm saying. We need to worry about what the gamblers think and what the fans think. But it also still comes down to the horse. And if the horses are given the opportunity to get a little bit of time between those races, but the other side of the argument is, but they're going to run against a lot better horses also in those races. I think overall that's better for the sport on all those metrics.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's just like I said, it's the way the tide is going. Like, you can fight it all you want. Eventually, we're going to have to adjust, just because that's the way people train their horses now. And it's not because they can't come back in 2 weeks. They want optimal spacing, and you gotta realize that this is like baseball adjusting to speed up the games. Like, I know a lot of purists hated that, but it just was necessary for the best possible product. And I think that's the case here. Just one other thing from the Preakness, we're going to talk to Rajiv Maragh in a little bit, and I'm curious to get his take. That bumping incident towards the top of the stretch, Megan told me about it. We were focused on Sandman, and then Megan texted me and was like, "Wow, that was really scary in the stretch." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And I go back and watch it. Yeah, that could have been really bad with that 3-horse bumper car situation. And I don't really have a strong feeling about whether or not Umberto screwed up or Flavien was a jerk about it. But it's just, that's the kind of thing that you see on fairly often in racing, especially turf racing. I feel like that happens, but all I got to say is, thank God that wasn't worse and someone didn't go down.
Exactly. And we were talking to Lisa Lazarus about it last week, about racing and how much safer it's been and everything like that. I was holding my breath when I was holding my breath anyway because of Sandman, but I was holding my breath especially on that one because I was like just, oh my God, please everyone come out of it safely. And not only they did, but again, journalism hitting the extra gear at that point. Joe, one more argument about the spacing of the races, because we only have focused primarily on the Triple Crown, but what about the filly races? I mean, we look at the Oaks and what a good top to bottom field that was. And you look at the Black Eyed Susan, and none of those horses, not one, came back to run in the Black Eyed Susan. As a matter of fact, there were 2 claiming horses in the Black Eyed Susan, no graded winners, and only 2 horses in the race were graded placed. To me, that's not what the Black Eyed Susan should be. The Black Eyed Susan should be, other great horses that are running, and maybe some of them that carry over from the Oaks into the Black Eyed Susan. And for none of them to come back on it, just doesn't make any sense to me at all. So if we're elongating the window of 4 weeks between the boy races, I would assume that the filly races would be right in lockstep with them, and we would just move that entire card from one venue 4 weeks later to the next venue. Because I got to tell you, the way that the Belmont card is shaping up is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And if we could have some of those horses that would have had that intermediary step of running on Pimlico Day as well, and it's not a knock against the horses that ran on Pimlico Day, because I thought they had a pretty good card.
You've said Pimlico instead of Preakness like 12 times. This is the first time I corrected
on Preakness Day at Pimlico. Then we would, it would benefit everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And it brings up the idea of should there be a triple tiara the Triple Crown? Would that help garner public interest? Because I remember way back, when I first started following racing, New York kind of had that to market the Triple Tiara. I think it was the Acorn, the CCA Oaks, and then the Alabama, and then they kind of forgot about that.
Right.
Should we, if and when we do elongate the spacing of the Triple Crown races, should we put more of a focus into having a filly equivalent?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember New York also had the Turf Tiara. Remember the first couple of years when they had the really long races? Maybe it was 5-6 years ago, mm-hmm. and they dubbed that a whole separate. They branded it basically to be a whole separate pool for bonuses and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, there's creative ways to do all these things, but I think that saying, well, that's the way we always did it, isn't the right argument to make at this stage of the game.